Placing your data into the cloud environment, and you need to be comfortable with that. And so you need to recognize that there may be promises that they're protecting your data, and I have controls in what they're doing, but you may want to take your own measures and protect your data before you put it into the cloud, or take small baby steps and put low sensitive data in there and recognize that you still may have exposures. And there may be issues that pop up that derail even that measure. I have one organization that they were just going to use unclassified data in a cloud environment, but as a company they also had classified information they were processing, and they run into issues like data spills, where there's inadvertent exposure of classified information. It's not intended, emails, human error usually is the cause. But the reality is that they couldn't really use a public cloud provider because the public cloud provider couldn't cope with the requirements by the agencies of how you deal with data spills. They couldn't, offer up, well, we'll give you the hard drive so you can cleanse it, purge it, to your standards. So there are issues like that that do pop up that you have to be cognizant of. I think, Param nailed it with the leadership talk today. It comes down to trust. How much are you willing to trust the provider? And in some cases, again, it's a little easier to trust a private provider because they understand your environment. They can help tailor, the actual service they're providing. A community provider is likewise probably closer. And then the furthest out is the public. And if you're going to use a public cloud computing environment, you better make sure your SLAs and your contract language is such that you can govern that effectively. And so you have to have the tools you need to get the visibility as to what's going on under the hood. And the provider may or may not be willing to give you that level of visibility. A lot of times, if you look at the public cloud offerings that are out there, they aren't necessarily wanting to expose what's going on with the services they're providing and how they're securing them. They're giving you that interface, and we'll let you know how to, get access to your data through that interface or get access to those applications. But they may not want to expose a lot of what's going on. And if that's not something your risk tolerance can handle, then you need to come up with a solution that you can cope with and how you can get the governance you need. So I personally think that the baby steps that are being taken is a lot of folks are going to try out pilots with private clouds or within a community cloud environment. And I think we're getting to the point where the public cloud providers are putting in place the security protections we need. But we need to get that trust established and have a body of evidence that they actually are doing all the things that they're claiming they're doing. And it's not clear to me at the moment that we have that with all the public, not all the public cloud providers, but that's going to take some more time.
Thank you, Paul. It's all a little scary. What do you guys think? What questions, what would you like us to answer or talk about up there? I'll come up with questions and then another one. Yes, go ahead. There's a microphone behind you.
So one of the questions that I have about some of the clouds is, from our own experience, we've seen that in many cases the cloud resources are in the United States, but that the administration, both DBA and system admin, are staffed from Argentina, Uruguay, Malaysia, India. Those are actual examples, Brazil. And this is HP, HP EDS, which I would have thought probably was all US. So I guess how do we understand, other than getting a certified government cloud, where some of the stuff might actually be run from, as well as where those assets reside? And one other second question is, and maybe a comment, I guess, before we go into the cloud, we have to have an idea of how to get out of the cloud and how to decommission the cloud if we need to. And some thoughts that you may have on that.
Anyone want to? Go ahead.
Sure.
I'm on. So I agree with you. And everybody that I talk to within government, once our needs absolutely requires the government data to stay within the United States, what is implicit there is that we expect the sysadmins to also be in the United States, which, as you pointed out, is not always the case. So one solution to that problem, besides the vendors stepping up and providing clouds with greater security in that sense, one solution is to look at cloud computing as not just public cloud computing. I mean, I end up talking a lot about public cloud computing. It's just very visible. The vendors are out there. But I believe very strongly that all of your agencies are adopting cloud computing and you don't even know it. I believe that as your data centers evolve, and as you adopt virtualization, and as you centralize applications, and provide more dynamic web interfaces, Web 2.0 kind of styling of your data center and your applications, that you are becoming more and more cloudy. And so I think you can take your data center today and compare it against the cloud computing essential characteristics that NIST put out. And then over time, I believe, for each of those characteristics, you'll see more and more of that becoming substantiated to the point where you can call it a cloud. And in that case, hey, you own it, you control it, and it will work well for you.
One of the things that's very clear, because the federal government is so broad, and the vendors have been struggling with who speaks for the federal government. And Peter didn't talk about the FedRAMP project, but one of the things that the CIO Council has been trying to do is to provide a kind of single point of understanding for the cloud providers. So that if it's critical to us that the sysadmins be not just U.S. citizens, but maybe even cleared U.S. citizens, we can make that a requirement. It'll increase the cost, it'll cut down the availability, but if that's what we require for a low, for a moderate, for a high, those are things that we can do. And do you want to talk just a brief minute about the governance for FedRAMP?
Sure. So, under the auspices of the CIO Council, the Federal Cloud Initiative, the Cloud Computing Security Working Group, which was comprised of about 25 different agencies, put together a proposal, a concept, which is now moving into the implementation stage, and it's called FedRAMP. So what is it? It's the Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program. The idea is to do assessment and authorization of cloud computing systems on a government-wide scale, to do government-wide risk management, for the government to act as a single customer, for the government to agree upon what security requirements it wants to levy on, in particular, public cloud computing systems, transparently communicate those within the agencies and to the vendor community. So everybody knows what the requirements are up front, everyone agrees upon them, and then to have an agreed upon body doing the assessment and authorization work, or the CNA work, on these systems in a way that it can be leveraged by all the other agencies. This solves some technical problems of agencies having incompatible policies being levied on the same resource pool shared system. It solves that technical problem. But it also would speed acquisition. It would reduce a lot of duplication of effort.